Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. This is episode number 304. And my co host today is not Brian McNichol, but it is David Shephard from Virginia. So we're keeping this in Virginia.
Yeah.
Welcome, David.
Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully today will be good technologically, tech-wise. Yeah, I think the snow sort of wreaks havoc on DC and everything, really, and maybe including, well, certainly the power lines and everything else. But it's good being with you.
Yep. Yeah, you're like we'll talk a little bit about the snow before we move on to the news portion here. But yeah, DC paralyzed traditionally by even the smallest amounts of snow.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of people who grew up in Utah, Idaho, places like that, and they come out here and they see that we shut down for even 3 inches of snow a lot of times. And, yesterday's snow was more than that, and they're just kind of like scratching their heads, like, we go to our schools don't close for unless it's like up to your waist or something.
Yeah.
They have contingency plans. They know what they're doing. It's because of the amount of snow that they tend to get in the western regions. They know how to deal with it. And I mean, I've lived here all my life, just like you've lived in the area all your life too, right? I mean, it just never changes. It doesn't matter. It's we go through the same thing every time we have a snowstorm. It's like, oh, panic mode. People don't know how to drive in it. They definitely can't handle the ice on the road, all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's always been the case. I think part of it is that, well, I still think this is still part of the kind of the old South in a way. So people aren't really used to that much snow. And secondly, it's weird. We have weird weather. We can go two winters without any storms and then a blizzard. And I'm not saying yesterday was a blizzard, but I mean it was pretty. You're talking 6 to 8 inches, so that's still
and it was steady, right? I mean, it
yeah.
just kept coming. It went on for hours and hours and hours. So it was this cumulative effect.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think they said it was the most snow we've had in 3 years. I mean, three years ago they had 6.9 inches.
All right.
So we have had a little bit of a snow drought, for which I don't complain about, because as I get older, I don't want to shovel it. I'm glad that my kids gave me a snow thrower, because it helps a heck of a lot to get rid of the snow. But I'm just not a fan of driving in it. It looks pretty, but as you get older, like, we're not getting off. You and I aren't really getting off from anything, right? I mean, we're not getting off from school or whatever. So
It's just a hassle.
Yeah, it is.
I liked it if I got out of school, but otherwise, I mean, I don't really think I have a friend who's a teacher, and she tells me that she still feels the same feeling, because when it snows, she's out of school. She's off. It's a day off for her too. So
yeah.
But no, I'll be glad when it's gone. I'll be glad when it's spring. So
yeah, I did as much as we can so far. So I looked out, and there is some sun, so it is having an effect on the thin layers. Is that if I got down far enough, I can see melting going on, so I can actually see cement or asphalt. I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. That'll be better.
That is
good. Hopefully it lasts long enough to clear most of that part of it out, so it doesn't refreeze tonight.
Yeah, if you just think about it, if you didn't have anywhere to go, you probably didn't even need to shovel out. Just let Mother Nature over the next few days get rid of it. But we have lives, so
yeah. And part of my routine is to go to the gym. My gym was closed yesterday. They probably open today because the roads are clear, except they didn't plow my street. And I'm like, I could try to go out. I was thinking about going out this morning, and my wife kind of said, nah, not until the streets are plowed. And I'm like, yeah, I'll wait one more day and then go back to the gym tomorrow. Everything should be running on all cylinders tomorrow. I don't. Snowplow usually comes through here a lot earlier than normal than a lot of other neighborhoods. So like, I don't know where they are, but they must be really backed up doing other work, or a shortage of drivers, something like that. Because it's just a lot better when they push the snow out of the way and scrape some of it off rather than having to drive through it. So, so anyway, so news. We'll start overseas a little bit in terms of foreign stuff, and then we'll go back. We'll go and just dig into our domestic issues. Pierre Trudeau resigned as the party leader, so effectively.
Justin.
Yeah, Justin. Sorry. Yeah. See, I'm old enough. I keep thinking Pierre. I keep thinking about his dad.
Yeah, I remember his father too, and I remember Fidel Castro. One of the two men were his father. He took the Trudeau name, but yeah, I remember Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll say this: the Trudeau family's had a long tradition in Canada of ruling the country. Justin has been doing it for about 9 years, and he has been stumbling as of late. His finance minister or whatever she was had some complaints, and I guess he was going to find her a different role, and she said that was demotion, so she just left. And that's the thing, in these kind of systems, your government, you got to hold these people together. If we have a cabinet person leave office, decide that they need, that's not a huge deal. Well, the president can find someone else. But a lot of times when these ministers, quit, that's a major deal in a lot of these parliamentary governments, particularly if they're dealing with the money side of things.
Yeah.
So that's a problem that he was facing. I've seen that there are a lot of people. I guess I think his party is complaining. Some people about the fact that he's resigning now, that he didn't stick it out a little bit longer.
Or the fact that he remains, as you pointed out, he still will remain as prime minister, but the party then has to find someone else. And I always thought the parliamentary system, at least in England, was different. When you don't really stick around. When you announce you resign like that day, and then someone else will replace you. Or, I guess no, I take that back. That's after an election. You're right. If you're in power, you're right. I guess they have to have some process of electing someone else, but they don't have a primary system. It's not like a long, big search, as far as I recall. It was start taking votes.
It's a little bit different, I think, in terms of how that is. Plus the fact that most of these countries, Canada is not quite the same, but they do have a little bit of fractiousness there. But in Europe in particular, right, that parliamentary system usually results in the way the parties are set up is that there are multiple parties in those countries. And so a lot of times it's hard to get the outright majority to actually to have your government. A lot of times there are coalition governments. Mm-hmm. Israel has that problem in terms of they've had to form multiple, coalition governments, and one guy gets mad at you or whatever, and the whole thing can collapse. So Germany is going to be calling for early elections because Scholz lost the vote of confidence. They have those by-elections, those those off-year elections, kind of thing like that. For the parliamentary members, and that has a lot to say, because if those tend to go even one race, they had one race in Canada a while back. Mm-hmm. They even used that as a barometer of problems for Trudeau, right? So when they've been held by the Liberal Party or party, and then they flip. Mm-hmm. Then people get concerned about, this is yet another signal of problems. But Trudeau's had he's had trouble with Trump too. He did try to get on Trump's good side, but I think Trudeau is basically paving the way for the Conservatives. I think they're looking at this as almost a given that the Conservatives will take over government in this next election. It'll be just a matter of by how much, whether or not they'll have full control or not, or whether or not they'll also have to deal with a minority group or something like that to be able to govern.
Yeah, and I've heard Trudeau is unpopular, and his party is unpopular. So Conservatives, I think, can take back over. And I think we pointed out that how history repeats itself. You had Ronald Reagan get elected, and then after him, Brian Mulroney came to power. Now you got Trump, and who knows now? Maybe you get the conservative. Hopefully to the right of Brian Mulroney, but then the conservative coming up. It's I don't know if Trump's dig about the 51st, the governor of the 51st state helped bring him down. I don't know, but That
Yeah,
was
I
a
don't.
funny line.
Yeah, you can't quite tell about that at all. All right, so I'm going to quickly move to just South Korea, just briefly, just because I don't know if you've been following this, but the situation in South Korea is just, to me, insane. So my wife is from Korea, and so I kind of look at that, and I'm like, this is just maddening. They South Korea has had these issues in the past. They've had military juntas kind of taking control of the government. They've been known for corruption, off and on over the years. This doesn't make a difference whether or not it's the kind of the conservatives or the liberals are running it. It's almost like ingrained that there will be a corrupt government at some point in time. They'll and that and the presidents only serve, I think, for one 5-year term. But they impeach. The president, I think he made a real blunder by doing that, declaring martial law, and then withdrawing it, and then that got their parliament to impeach him, uh, which is one step, and they replaced him with one of the ministers, I guess. But then that minister wouldn't follow along with Parliament's demand that he appoint Supreme Court justices so they could get rid of the former president, or while he was acting president. So they impeached him. So then they wound up impeaching two, and then the last thing they were doing was that they tried to send, what is it, police or whatever, to go to the presidential palace to arrest the president, the first one that got impeached. But the military, I guess, stopped them from doing that. And I'm like, South Korea is no longer a backwards country. I mean, after World War II, after the Korean War, I mean, we saw Japan, we saw Korea. I mean, real engines of growth in Asia, and they've done a lot of good things. In these last 5-6 decades, or maybe 8 decades by now. So there's been a lot of good things going on there. We buy a lot of goods from these countries, right? We use a lot of their material, and yet we've got this nutty situation, as far as I'm concerned, where their government, I don't know what's going to happen. Now I'm glad that Trump's coming into office, because maybe Trump will do something. I think he always kept North Korea's Kim Jong-un at bay.
Yeah.
And he's now going to be inheriting the situation where the situation in South Korea is a little unstable, and he needs to rectify that too. So Trump's coming into an interesting situation. I mean, Prime Minister of Canada resigning, in essence. We've got this unstable situation in South Korea, and and some other things. Greenland, right? Trump on his Greenland. I don't know if you saw that news story, but the King of Denmark changed the coat of arms to make the Greenland symbol bigger on the coat of arms, and this was directly as firing back at Trump. So we're just seeing some funny things going on with overseas things, but to me, Joe Biden, their foreign policy was never good. I mean, we've just had lots of problems in his foreign policy that I hope that, and I expect that Trump will rectify.
Yeah, you and I grew up in a time where so much of that happens, and I understand some of it's natural as other countries develop and they become powers of their own. But a lot of it's American weakness. But there are things that are going on that would never have gone on 10, 15 years ago. For example, Iran attacking Israel, or Putin moving into Ukraine, or just a lot of these things. I think it comes down to sort of American weakness in part, that you see countries behaving aggressively this way, or just sort of ignoring the United States as if who cares about American opinion. But like I said, when you and I grew up, well, they did care about American opinion on all these things.
Well, it was, what was it, Reagan? Was his thing was, peace through strength or something like that? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, look, we want peace, but we want to be strong. We don't want to just roll over to these other foreign nations and say, sure, we'll give you all of that. I think Trump kind of subscribes to that whole theory. I mean, he came in there with kind of that America first policy, and say, we're taking care of ourselves first. Our country's interests come number one, and then you yours comes second to ours, but we can work this. We can make it work. It's extremely compatible that we can do this, and have good relations. We can have good relations with Canada. We can have good relations with Mexico, but you got to understand we're taking care of our country and our people first.
Yeah.
And I think Trump did a lot of that. I think when he came into office in 2017, really, that he kept a lot of these foreign powers, from doing the things. So, you notice that it didn't take all that long before Putin decided to go into Ukraine. Right after Trump leaves office, things started to percolate, and these plans start to happen where all this stuff. I'd have a hard time believing that Hamas necessarily would have made that attack on Israel had Trump been in office. I think these foreign countries, they see when they can detect weakness, these particularly the other side, the left, all these militants, if they can see a little bit of weakness, they're going to try to exploit that hole and then just expand upon it and drill right through it. But Trump, I always marvel at how Trump he had his own way of doing diplomacy. When he came into office the first time, a lot of world leaders did not like that, including Angela Merkel, right? But it really, I think it worked. I think those were good policies. He didn't necessarily have the best people, like Rex Tillerson at the State Department. That was not a great pick. But I think what we're seeing in general with his nominees for this cabinet, they're far better than they were for Trump 1. I think he learned a lot of things while he was out of office, and he can put, as long as he can get him through the Senate, he can basically nominate his kind of people. He wants loyalists, people that will follow through on his policy and do that, which is, I think, it's fine with me.
Well, I was thinking, Kamala, speaking of overseas, Kamala Harris, well, not overseas, but she did grow up. She spent time in Canada. I think she grew up practically in Canada. Well, now that Trudeau's leaving, they're looking for a new leader there. Kamala, maybe bring her back. I'm just joking. Bring her back. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, the other thing, I saw a report that, or one other, people always wonder what is Kamala going to do next? The speculation also is that she might run for governor, right, in California. It's like, well, does California really want her? Does anybody really want Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see the love there, or the affection for her. I think they probably just want her to go. I understand they rallied behind her. Obviously, she's the nominee, and even now they're generally sympathetic. But deep down, I think they know she was a disaster. I can't imagine them wanting to bring her back. And in California, well, they have other California Democrats that are probably have their eyes on the governor's mansion. Why would they step aside for her? I don't know why they would. So I don't know. I think she does want to run again, though. I do think she wants to get back at it, and she's young, so it's understandable. But other than California, I don't know where else she could win. If you think about it.
I'll find that to be interesting if she decides to throw her hat in the ring, in 2028, and let's say that J.D. Vance, who is now the front runner for the nomination, now that he's the vice president.
Yeah.
If it winds up being those two, if somehow Kamala managed to navigate and get through, the Democratic primaries, and she winds up being the nominee and has to go up against J.D. Vance, I don't think she stands much of a chance. I mean, if they do some debates, she's going to get crushed.
Yeah.
In those debates. I don't even know that she can get through many primaries. She could probably win her home state of California, and she might win a few other places. But I think even though the Democrat bench is still, to me, very thin for 2028 right now, others could emerge. And Kamala's just not a strong enough candidate, I think, to fend off a lot of people. Maybe her best bet is that you get a lot of people who declare, who want to run. You get one of these, you get like a 12-person field. so it kind of spreads out a little bit at the beginning. So it won't take much to win a primary, in a
Yeah.
state. And then you kind of piecemeal your way through that process to get to the nomination. But
Well,
it won't be a coronation.
no, not at all. And they're better candidates. But I made this point with Carter, and I reminded people that his 76 election was a fluke because it was in response sort of to Watergate. And Carter had a light resume, but he was a Naval Academy grad. He was an outsider, governor of Georgia, former governor, thought of as a moderate conservative Democrat. And he went to Iowa. He camped out, shook all those hands. The field was kind of crowded, and he won the Iowa caucuses, and that propelled him. So he sort of came out of nowhere, but it was just a good time for him. It was all about politics, timing, and he was the right person at the right time, and it looked like he was the answer. No, he wasn't, but that's what he looked like and appeared to be. I just don't see Kamala Harris ever really being thought of as the answer, really.
Yeah.
And
look, and the Republicans, I mean, you had, I mean, Jerry Ford is a nice guy. He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
But he was thrust into a position which I'm not sure he was ready to handle the mantle of that. I mean, he had a couple of years. I guess he took over in 74.
Yeah, Nixon resigns and he comes up, and he also had the tough distinction of he wasn't even elected vice president.
Yeah,
because remember after Dwight's hero Spiro Agnew dropped out.
Right. So, right. So there, you could say that's an interesting parallel to almost to Kamala. Kamala. Nobody voted for Kamala, right? To put her as a nominee for the Democrats. She just was there. And they kind of anointed her because of the craziness of that campaign. By the time that Biden, resigned, he decided he wasn't going to run again. They were kind of just stuck as to what to do at that point. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Carter versus Ford. I mean, Carter versus someone else, I think could have been a different thing too, because as he said, right place, right time, lightweight. But this is how elections run a lot of times. If you wind up being just in the right place at the right time, Maryland has that. I don't know. You can comment on Virginia politics, but I'll make two comments about Maryland, gubernatorial politics. One is that Bob Ehrlich, when he ran against Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, who was the lieutenant governor beforehand. Not a good candidate.
No.
And Ehrlich was a pretty good candidate coming, as a congressman and everything like that. And he won. Even when he lost to O'Malley for his reelection, he was still a very highly popular governor. But when you're in a state that's got 60-70% Democrats registered throughout the state, it's hard to overcome. Larry Hogan, who was the last Republican governor we had here in Maryland, kind of the same thing. Hogan's political chops were really serving as Ehrlich's appointment secretary. He had a brother, I guess that served in the state legislature in Maryland at one point in time, but he was not himself a politician. He was like a real estate guy and whatever. But he built a campaign machine that was kind of a bipartisan effort, this Change Maryland. And he worked on that for years. And so he had this kind of mechanism in place.
Yeah.
And then he goes up against weaker candidates, right? 2 times in a row, he faces just really terrible candidates. And
Anthony Brown, who was the second person? Remember, Anthony Brown, I think, was the first one. And then who was Hogan's second opponent?
Oh, it was...
must have been bad. I already forget.
It was the guy. I think it was the guy from the NCAA, right?
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I can't see now. If Dwight was here, Dwight would remember off the top of his head.
That's okay, but but you're right. He had weak opponents.
Yeah, he had opponents that just didn't have, and after Hogan's first term, which he had also basically turned against Trump, the Democrats had nothing to pin on him because they controlled the legislature anyway, and they were going to control most of the agenda. But Hogan was very popular, and so while he won, he beat Brown the first time around, he really cleaned up the second time around. People really liked him, and
Yeah.
they didn't really have second thoughts about voting for him again.
Yeah.
That turned in this last election where Wes Moore won. So
Yeah.
like Wes Moore is a potential 2028 candidate, I
That's
think.
true.
And everything like that. So they look at these people and say, oh, that may be it. Gavin Newsom, Wes Moore, Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah. I
Those
mean,
are
they
the
have, yeah, and everyone you mentioned, let's face facts, be a stronger candidate than Kamala Harris.
yeah.
I mean, every one of them would be a tougher candidate. So I don't know what else she does, but I mean, it's fine. There's life after politics. She can do other things. I mean, but I just, and maybe she can get an appointment somewhere, appointed to something. But the two senators in California aren't going anywhere, right? Schiff just got elected.
Right.
I forget who the other one was. They're not going anywhere. And I would think that there are going to be lots of Democrats that are eyeing the governor's mansion, and I don't think they're going to step away for her. So it's
Yeah.
not like, remember Hillary?
I don't know who the lieutenant governor is because they don't, lieutenant governors are generally, they kind of disappear. They really don't have many duties. And so, but a
Yeah.
lot of times, if a lot of times they will think about running, they'll test the waters and see about that.
But for her, that'd be a step down. I mean, she couldn't really run for lieutenant governor or something. That'd be
right. She couldn't run for lieutenant governor. That wouldn't,
yeah.
you need to run for that,
Yeah.
she, the Senate, her old Senate seats, they're all locked up now. So,
Yeah.
where does she go from there? She could also always change residence and move to another state, right? And start
Yeah.
there too.
But remember Hillary when she decided she stood by her man, as she said she wouldn't do, and after the Alinsky affair and all, and Democrats kind of owed her. Well, she wanted to be in the U.S. Senate. Well, she couldn't really go back to Arkansas because it's a Republican state, and she couldn't win there. But they had their eyes on New York. Moynihan leaving, and she figured she'd follow. And Robert F. Kennedy did the same thing. He went to New York, got elected. So they cleared the way for her. Remember, they had a couple, Nita Lowey, a congresswoman from New York, a longtime congresswoman. She wanted the seat, but they pushed her out for Hillary. In Kamala's case, I don't think she's got that same sort of status with the party, and I don't think they're pushing people out of the way for her. That's all. I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Clinton name goes a long way in the Democrat Party. So yeah,
Yes.
they definitely clear the path for Hillary to do as much as they could to make sure she would get that seat, no doubt. I don't. So yeah, Kamala had a little bit of a problem this past week too with the Senate swearing in, where they start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and it looks like she flubbed the line there, and like, how do you do that?
Well, I think part of it is you and I belong to probably a number of different conservative groups, and well, even when I was a Toastmasters, we'd start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So all these different groups, we're used to saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And at a county committee meeting, Republican county committee meeting, we always start Pledge of Allegiance. But I think she probably doesn't. The groups and things she goes to, they probably never recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So when she's told to do the Pledge of Allegiance, she may not even know what it is or can recite it. So that's just my theory.
It's not as ingrained in her as it is with the rest of us.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right. I mean, and a lot of kind of where you'll see like liberal town councils and other things like that. A lot of them have done away with the pledge, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, conservative groups. I can't think of some conservative group that hasn't started, their meeting, with the pledge. I mean, it's usually there somewhere.
Well, I'm old enough to remember, and you are too. At least in school, we did the Pledge of Allegiance every morning.
Yeah.
Part of home. What do they call your home class? I forgot what they call it.
Well, I mean, there was homeroom in middle school. We didn't have homeroom in elementary school. We just because I sat in the same. When I went to elementary school, we were in the same classroom all day.
Yeah.
And, all the subjects, all day long. So, but but that was, the pledge came under attack in public schools.
Yeah, it's probably gone at this point, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what the how many because it's not inclusive enough, and don't want to offend all these other people. It's like, I'm sorry. Look, once again, this is our country.
Yeah,
our rules, okay?
Yeah, I agree.
You want to come here. If you don't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance because you're from Eritrea or whatever, or you don't really know it, fine. You don't have to, I'm not going to force you to do it on the one hand,
Yeah.
but don't get it totally banned, or don't do the Colin Kaepernick thing and take a knee, okay? Don't make a big display out of that. Just silently do your protest, right? So, which also says to me, I think we've noticed over the last, because I think Colin Kaepernick when he first with the whole national anthem thing, that he brought out, it's been like 8 years now. That I think a lot of that furor has died down,
Yeah.
and you don't see the players behaving like that anymore. Only a handful, like Megan Rapinoe and people like that. But by more and more, when you see our teams play, whether or not it's professional team or one of our national teams, they're there, they're there, putting their heart over their hand for the national anthem, even. So we have pledge, we have the national anthem, all these controversies that I never thought I'd ever see in my life. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
this is the United States of America, okay? We are a melting pot. We will accept you, but we're not changing the rules for you.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, well, they always push the envelope as much as they can. So, uh, but I think that's probably was a fad, the kneeling for the national anthem. I think that's probably mostly gone now. Well, either that or maybe the sports team, maybe they don't even do the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem anymore. So maybe that's it.
Well, they had that, they had that other weird thing too, where they were playing the Black national anthem
Oh,
before the
okay.
national anthem. It's like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
like,
that's totally, yeah.
but I think it kind of went through a little wave. I mean, now that there's so many years, I mean, Colin Kaepernick, I mean, I think he still harbors a desire to play in the NFL, but he hasn't played in the NFL for 8 years.
Yeah.
At this point in time, no one's really going to give him a chance. And
Yeah.
he's gone off and done some other ventures, and I think he's making money doing those other ventures.
Yeah.
But it didn't catch on big enough that it created this whole thing of like, oh, we have to do this. It had probably more backlash of like, how dare you kneel for the national anthem, or how dare you turn your back for the national anthem, that kind of a thing like that. I mean, I certainly don't see that at the baseball games I go to a couple times a year. We that's you play the national anthem to start the game before it goes. People they know to stand, they know to be part of it,
Yeah.
and it's a big deal for people to get asked to sing the national anthem at a sporting event.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so I don't know. I'm glad some of those things have kind of gone back to the right direction from where they were before.
Yeah, and now that Trump's president, I think the displaying of the pride flag on foreign embassies and stuff, I think that's all gone too. I think he's going to get rid of all that. That's a Biden thing, I guess. So that's good news.
So I'm gonna throw this out at you. It's not on our general list, but so there's been an interesting. I don't know how much you know about Utah's politics or their newspapers, but
Mm.
they have one of the newspapers is the Salt Lake Tribune,
Mhm.
very liberal, really very anti Latter-day Saint Church Jesus Christ Latter-day Saint, and so they published an article which I couldn't get to because it's behind a paywall, but
Mm.
I noticed one of the columnists on Twitter had kind of posted this and posted the article, and then people were commenting, and I kind of ran through the comments, and the gist of it apparently was really it's just that BYU as a church-owned school was basically telling their professors that um, they had to kind of sign off on a code of conduct in terms of only teaching the things that fit within the church principles, right?
Mhm.
And no, don't go off on the LGBT what LGBTQ what what
LGBTQ plus
whatever.
111. I don't know. It keeps
Anyway,
changing.
yeah, so they don't have to do that. I mean, they basically do that, and then don't wear like any pride stuff or whatever, because apparently some of that stuff had been seeping into the classroom.
Wow.
And I guess the church had decided it's like, no,
Yeah.
this is owned and operated, and the funds come from tithing funds that the church members pay in, and why the tuition remains relatively low. That's what pays your salaries.
Yeah.
And so the Tribune has this thing like it's like some big expose. Oh, maybe kind of a free speech issue. But as I scroll through the comments, I thought it was pretty funny, just because I think 99.9% of them were just like, oh, imagine that, a religious-owned institution asking, basically trying to enforce their own rules, to have their professors follow the religion, that type of thing, right? So I guess I'm not getting quite the play or what the effect that they thought they would get. But I mean, is there anything wrong with a church-owned school? It can be an LDS church, it can be a Catholic church, whatever, that they run in colleges or universities or any kind of school. I mean, there's nothing. Is there anything wrong if they said, we want you to follow the gospel as we teach it? I mean, this has been part of the problem of the Catholic institutions. I mean, the late Mal Klein used to write all the time about what he called Catholics in name only, higher education, schools that they were Catholic, but they weren't Catholic in their teachings, so he always found that to be an irritant, that if you're a Catholic school, you should make sure that you abide by the Catholic Church's principles, and do that, and that the students should know that. I mean, I know the students at BYU, I don't know how many courses they have to take, but they have to sign up for religion courses at BYU. So they have to have at least one during their 4 years, probably more than that. So they know that going in,
Yeah.
Why do you want to have professors that might be teaching things that are, not in agreement with what the church teaches, with what these kids, especially if they've been members all their life, have been taught all their life, all of a sudden they hear somebody else teaching something else, why? That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I agree, and that's a lot of these Catholic schools really aren't really even Catholic anymore. At least the big universities, and then of course a lot of schools were founded by our churches too. Duke, one time was a Methodist school, and so many of these universities just became secularized. And the same thing probably happened with Notre Dame, even, and Georgetown, certainly a Catholic school, probably no longer. But the old story, I don't know if I told you the story of the guy, Catholic, Irish working Catholic, sends his kid to Notre Dame. The family's a good, solid Catholic family. 4 years in Notre Dame, the kid comes back, he's basically an atheist. And the father complained to his priest, and the priest said, you should ask for your money back. So yeah, these schools are for the most part secularized. I didn't know that would be the case with BYU. But yeah, I think they just all become mostly politically correct. You can find a few solid conservative schools or religious schools. I mean, Hillsdale, I think, is still solidly conservative.
Yeah.
And so there are a few, but for the most part, a lot of it comes with the students, and the students may influence the professors, and then the professors, they come from all over anyway. They may not. I mean, I would imagine at BYU, you have a lot of professors that aren't LDS members, I would think. They may come from.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think the student body is probably in the high 90s.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It really is, but they they'll take people who aren't members. It's just there's a limitation into how big the classes, class size can be, so they try to adhere to that. I don't know what that, they have another school in Rexburg, Idaho. They call it, it's now called BYU Idaho. Used to be called Rick's College, and a lot of kids go there that couldn't, some that didn't make it to BYU, but they probably have slightly lower standards in terms of, admission standards. And
Yeah.
you can get in there and then then try to transfer over to Provo. But they had to. I think the church had to change the Rick's 2-year junior college into a 4-year BYU Idaho campus, because they just had so much demand, and they just didn't have the ability to take everybody that they wanted to come there.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
I had a friend once who was a member of the LDS church, and he had a mission, and I asked him what his mission was. You know what it was? It was to it took place in Salt Lake City because it become so secularized that he was spreading the faith even into Salt Lake City. I think it was Salt Lake City or maybe Provo. So I was surprised by that even in Utah, they still have a lot of missionaries trying to convert.
Oh yeah. No, that
it does.
It does seem kind of odd, to a lot of people. I mean, even to me, sometimes but Salt Lake City is extremely liberal.
Okay, yeah.
It's just very different. And so they've had a gay mayor. I think that they've had a transgender mayor or something like that. They elect all these kooky people to be mayor in Salt Lake City. And I think, that, what was it? Is it the 4th district or whatever? The one that Burgess Owens is now representing. I think it used to bleed into Salt Lake. I think they probably have redrawn it now. And that's why for a number of years, it was represented by a Democrat.
Okay. All right. Because I was
in Congress before. I think they kind of changed the map so that they could give the Republicans a chance to kind of control everything there. So obviously Democrats coming in from California and stuff like that, they're always like, oh, there's too many Republicans in the state. But the people from the West have changed the makeup of Utah. That it's not as solidly, Latter-day Saint nor conservative as it used to be. They're still going to vote Republican for the foreseeable future. I think it's just that you don't necessarily think you get, you may not get, 70%, rates, for the presidential race anymore. There are a lot of these independent thinkers. And do you remember the guy named Evan McMullen years ago?
I do.
You have people like that kind of get it, throw their name into the ring or whatever, and they kind of clog up the whole mix. So you see that. But
was he LDS, an LDS member?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was going to say too, before we move on, there was the other thing too, is that there's been a 5-year fight at SMU about who's supposed to control that. So that this sometimes this is what happens with church-run schools.
Yeah.
So I guess the Baptists are having and I don't know. It was reported by a Baptist newspaper or whatever, but just about how it's going to the Texas Supreme Court about governance, about SMU and everything like that.
I'll check that out. Yeah, because it's interesting. A lot of the schools were started by churches, and many.
Isn't Baylor?
I think Baylor was
a Baptist school. I think
so. I think Baylor's Baptist, and Duke was a Methodist school. But let's face it, it's as secular as can be. So it's just, I guess, and I think Randolph-Macon as well was founded by a church. But I'll check the SMU story. I didn't know.
Yeah, there's something going on over there. All right. So yesterday was January 6th.
Yep.
Anniversary of January 6th from 4 years ago, but also the day that President Trump, his election was certified and presided over by none other than Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
so that's got to, I mean, look, as much as bad a candidate as we've discussed her being, it's like, that's got to be kind of hard when you're certifying your opponent.
I agree. And remember, Dan Quayle, I guess, had to do that. George Quayle, Gore had to do that, certify it. And then Biden, remember when Trump won in 2016, it was Biden there who was certifying the victory.
Yeah.
And then in the Senate, you had that objection by Maxine. In the House, I guess Maxine Waters objected, and Biden shot her down and said, well, do you have a senator that, because the rule says you have to have at least one senator to sponsor it. And she says, no, we're working on that. And Biden hit the gavel, says, well, it's done. It's over. So I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, that whole thing should be rather perfunctory.
Yeah.
It kind of went off the rails, 4 years ago. But I think we're maybe back to where we need to be with this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
going forward. So that's good. But the media has used January 6th.
Yeah.
They're all hyping it up between just recalling what happened 4 years ago, the mess that it was 4 years ago. The amount of security that they had around Capitol Hill this time, in case something like that happened again. But President Trump, 4 years ago, I mean, he had a rally beforehand before they were doing the vote. People marched down, the street and whatever. But he didn't say go down to the Capitol and storm the Capitol. He never said
Yeah.
anything like that. It was
Yeah.
portrayed as an insurrection, which it wasn't.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of people who took it upon themselves to do things they probably shouldn't have done, and breaking the law by running through the barriers, going into Congress, going
Yeah.
into the halls of Congress, assaulting police officers and things like that. There's rumors that Trump will pardon these people, but I think you and I both agree that if he's going to do any of this at all, he needs to do it very selectively. Because I mean, look, if you've assaulted a police officer, no, you know, you need to pay a price for it. You need to serve some time for that. We can't send it. We can't send the signal that you can assault a police officer and then the president comes in and you'll get off scot-free later or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anything really serious about that, I don't think that is. If there are minor trespassing charges, if they still existed,
Yeah.
yeah. Though I think the District of Columbia, I mean, I think they didn't want to charge. If it was just trespassing, they couldn't give them anything else. I don't think they even bothered to go through and charge them with that. They were looking at this more serious charges. So Trump, and I know there are a lot of people waiting for this, but he needs to be careful.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't do a mass pardon either. Maybe just like you said, if it's a trespassing case, you can, or you can just commute it. You don't have to do like a Hunter Biden 14 years, whatever you did. But if it's a trespassing case, I think you can
He
forgive
might as
that.
well, Biden might as well have pardoned Hunter from the day he was born.
Yeah, I
At
guess so.
that point, it's nuts.
But the fact that he did that indicates that he knows that that Hunter broke a lot of laws, and that's why he's
Yeah,
doing
I mean, it's just like, why do you? It's like, why do you do that? I mean, it's one thing if he had focused us on the time period of when we knew he did stuff. Okay, we get it, we get it. Though he said he wasn't going to do it, and so he went back on that. He lied about that. But then to expand it further than that, and you're like, okay, this is a little suspicious here. What you know what do you know that the rest of the public doesn't know?
Yeah,
And now we probably will never know as a result of
yeah,
this.
yeah. But I'm amazed at how Biden is very Carter-like. Carter he didn't have a wayward kid, but he had Billy. Remember Billy Carter, and I think he pardoned Billy Carter, didn't he? Because Billy was.
He may have. Billy was. See, the thing about Billy is Billy was amusing, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He was amusing. It was. Billy didn't bother me too much. Kind of
And
just.
my father had a can of Billy beer. Remember
Yeah,
Billy
Billy
beer?
Beer.
And
Why not? Why
apparently,
not? Why not try to take advantage of it?
and Carter's mother said, Miss Lillian, that Billy Carter was the smartest of her kids. She said Billy Carter was the smartest one. I think it's true. I think IQ wise, Billy Carter was the smartest of them all. And
Hey, I forgot all about Lillian Carter. That's yeah. Wow.
she lived a long life, but Jimmy Carter, and this is why it's amazing he made it to 100. His father died at like 50.
Mhm.
All his siblings died like when they were in their 50s and 60s. Billy Carter made like 51. I mean, in effect, Jimmy Carter outlived his brother, lived twice as long as his brother. So that I thought was amazing that the cancer that runs in the family it didn't hit Jimmy.
Yeah,
So
this is having had cancer now and having lost my son to cancer. It we had no history of cancer that I know of in our family, and that now we've got this, and now we see a lot of incidences of cancer in young people, just startling rates. But nothing is predictable. I mean, there are some things so I think with some breast cancer, sometimes you can see it happens generation after generation after
Yeah.
generation. But there are a lot of things that it happens to some and then won't happen to a lot to the rest. I mean, it may skip a few generations. Who
Yeah.
knows? You know,
It's like
we live as long as we live.
it's like MS. MS, I think they think is just totally random.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Knock on wood, it'll be okay. But yeah.
Yeah, and you don't know. I mean, we have so many diseases that hit people that we don't have an idea of how they got it, what is causing it. We have, thank goodness, because of modern medicine, we have lots of treatments that can take care of a lot of these things, but there's still a lot of things that are not, don't have very high cure rates. So we still lose a lot of people along the way as a result of that. Yeah, but Carter, I mean, he was on hospice for a long time. I mean,
He
we
was.
we
Yeah,
we thought
Carter,
we thought we'd lose him, what, a couple of years ago, maybe, or something. I don't know.
yeah. And then
So
and then the wife died. He made it a good bit longer after than she did. I didn't think he'd live quite that long after her,
yeah, yeah.
but he did.
So and he hit the century mark. So
That's
congratulations.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's just I must tell you, I'll make this confession. I'd never want to live that long. I have no desire to make 100. I
yeah.
had a I had
Go
an
ahead.
ex that wanted to make 100, and I thought, no way. I had no desire to live that long, really.
Yeah,
Mm,
I don't this I marvel at people who do, and we see news reports and things like that. There are ramifications with that sometimes because not a lot of people who get into their 90s still have all their marbles, as we say, right?
yeah,
They're still able to function somewhat normally, because dementia is such a big issue. I mean, my mother had dementia towards the end. That's not a
yeah,
life. I mean, she had lived to 97, but the last few years of her life were just not really
yeah,
a life, right?
yeah,
So, that's where you're looking at the quality of life. When if you live to 75 and you've had a good life and it's been you had relatively good health and things like that,
yeah,
it's probably better than somebody living another 10 years who's got multiple ailments, is bedridden, maybe has had to have chemotherapy or something like that. Just a lot of other things like that that don't take away from life. So, yeah,
Well,
I don't see
maybe the
pain.
best maybe the best way to die is like Nelson Rockefeller in the arms of a 20-year-old woman. I don't know. Did
Yeah.
they removed and they removed him from the situation? You ever heard that story? That he was cheating on his wife. He dies with this other woman, and then I think they moved the body because of the embarrassment. So anyway,
Yeah, that's we you see a lot of that type of thing happening in like TV shows, right?
yeah, that's
They've
true.
they've learned from real life. Oh yeah, yeah. Older politician dies with a younger person they're having a fling with. Oops.
Well, my hero Mencken died in his sleep because of a heart attack. That would have been a fine way to go. Just you're out. So
Yeah, I mean I don't know what the preferred method of dying is. I mean, it's just there is something to be said for at least towards the end of having your loved ones being able to have a chance to say goodbye. Though I did find that watching my father die was rather painful.
yeah,
I mean, he was in hospice for a few weeks, and I'm just like, I don't know. This is watching someone take their last breath. I
yeah, I
can't.
agree.
I can't do that. You
Yeah,
know,
no, I agree with you. Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
and
Yeah.
we weren't even planning to be there when he took his last breath. We just happened to be there, with my
Oh
mother.
yeah,
And it was just, So I'm in one respect, I'm glad that we were there at the end for her sake.
yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, okay, that death just like that just kind of, I don't know, gives me the willies or whatever.
Oh,
Um,
I agree. No, I agree. I just think that'd be too tough, and yeah, no, Not
Yeah,
good.
even when my son passed away, I mean, I arrived in Arizona too late, uh,
Okay.
and everything like that. And as traumatic as that was,
Yeah, jeez.
I keep rerunning that in my head and thinking like maybe it was better the way it worked out for me because I think it would have been worse if I had to watch it at the end. Uh,
Yeah.
my wife was already there and everything like that. So I was like, yeah, I think that's one of the worst things in life is to watch someone else die in front of you or whatever.
I think
Uh,
so. Yeah.
that's pretty tough. All
Yeah, I
right,
mean, even yeah.
go ahead. No, you were gonna
No, I agree. I agree. I'm sorry to be so morbid. I
say.
give something happy.
No, no, no. But I mean, that's just part of the thing. I mean, we're talking about Jimmy Carter. I mean, you wrote a piece on your Substack about Jimmy Carter and his legacy.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, how much difference, for you is there between, say, Jimmy Carter's, one term in office versus, say, Joe Biden's?
Well, they're very similar. The thing I would say though, and they both left with 34% approval ratings. Um, they're both weak on foreign policy, both bad on economics, had inflation problems. The difference is I don't think Carter would have purposely opened the borders. He wouldn't purposely allow an invasion in the country like Biden. And I think Carter was more decent than Biden. And I think he was more sincere than Biden. I think he was less political. Biden spent his entire career in Washington. He's a career politician. For him, it was everything was politics. I don't think that was the case with Carter. I think Carter was more about principles and less about partisan advantage and less about a partisan angle. So, so Carter was, I'd say, a more decent person in that regard. But they both were failed presidents. The difference is, though, Carter had 50 years to try to make up for it. Well, not that long, but something like that. Whereas Biden doesn't. I mean, I think he just goes off into the sunset, and I don't know if we hear from him again.
Yeah,
He's not going to go
yeah. I
out
mean,
building houses.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Biden's already on the old side of things, so
Yeah.
maybe he gets to 100, but that's
Yeah.
only another what 18, 19 years or whatever how old he is right now.
Yeah.
So versus Carter. It, for history purposes, I mean, if you had to put on your crystal ball there, it's like which president will wind up being remembered more fondly, or would just have, I don't know, a higher popularity rating or whatever. Is it Carter or will it be Biden? If we go down another 20 years.
Carter, I think. Because for Biden, I think there'll be questions about the cover up of his mental condition. That I think will come out. And the border issue we'll be dealing with for years with all these people here. So I think Biden will be thought of as worse than Carter. But Carter did lose Iran. We lost Iran because of Carter.
Yeah,
He's the one that lost Iran. So
and he gave away the Panama Canal.
that's right.
For
That's right.
which Donald Trump has been railing about. It's been, because I mentioned Greenland earlier. It's like all
Yeah.
of a sudden these issues that I haven't heard about for decades, it seems, all of a sudden, I don't know who's told Trump he had to discuss this, but let's buy Greenland, and then he's browbeating the Panama Canal over the shipping rates and things like this. I'm like, okay, nobody's been talking about this for a long time, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden we've got this. But I wonder sometimes too whether or not this is a little bit of a smoke screen. He throws that up while they work on some other things. Those two issues are not the most important issues in the world, and they're definitely not going to be top of the agenda for Donald Trump. I think there's other things, but maybe it's kind of a little bit of he diverts people onto these things, and they're like, the media goes, oh my gosh, he wants to buy Greenland. What kind of a kooky idea is it? Or but the rates in the Panama Canal are really not that bad. I mean, it's the way they have. In the meantime, they work on the other things and get other things done. While all this, so maybe there's just this little purpose that they have, throwing these things out there while they get some other things done, because they Republicans have done a pretty good job, I think, in the past of they get judges confirmed and nobody knows about it, right? It's all of a sudden, the federal judicial bench is loaded up with Republican judges, and people are like, "How did that happen?" Well, the president kept sending nominations to the Senate, and the Senate was doing their business while other things were capturing the headlines.
That's true. And I do wonder if Alito and Thomas may want to check out because this way they know they'd be appointed by, and Republicans have the Senate, they know they'd be appointed by a fellow like-minded person. I don't know. I think they're both still young enough that they probably don't want to, but this is a lot.
I think they want to stick around, but
Yeah.
you know, we'll know more maybe in the next year and a half, just because, with another Senate, election coming up, with the midterms, another midterm, anything can happen. They could possibly, the Republicans could possibly lose control of the Senate. So they have the potentially finite window to make this happen.
Yeah.
So, and it's all going to depend too. I mean, how is the health of Alito or Clarence Thomas? I mean, I thought Scalia's health was fine, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, they can just drop dead on you.
Well, if I hope everyone's healthy, but you never know if in the next 4 years if he may get a couple more opportunities. And the most Roosevelt has the record. I think Roosevelt appointed 8 Supreme Court justices.
Wow.
So Roosevelt has Trump has 3, so a couple more maybe. We'll see.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up with yet another Biden thing that he's doing as he's trying to just irk us, I guess, and which is the Presidential Medal of Freedom that he's awarded. So I mean, we see these citizens medals and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So Hillary and George Soros are getting these medals, and you're like, why?
I know, yeah. Especially Soros in the case, and I've got a column about this coming up this afternoon about how Soros has funded all these DAs, all these local prosecutors that have made the streets less safe. And it's weird that he would be getting a medal, a Medal of Freedom. So,
but basically, it does have a lot to do with probably the amount of money he's pumped into the Democrats over the years, right?
Well, yeah. Well, that's probably what it is.
And I guess Bill got this award before, so now it's Bill and Hillary both have one.
I guess. I can't imagine giving her an award for anything. They came into government poor. They walked out millionaires, hundreds of millions, maybe.
Yeah.
And why give them an award for their service when you made so much money off your service? It's just.
Yeah. So I mean, what Biden has done, in my opinion, is I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to these awards that the president gives out, but they usually are pretty okay, in general. I mean, but I think he's really kind of cheapened the whole thing, politicized this whole thing. It's just a shame that something like this that should be honoring people for the work they do, for some accomplishment that they have had, major accomplishment they've had that contributes to to American society. All of a sudden, we're getting these people like, what are these people have done? Beyond giving lots of money to the Democrat Party, or just being Democrat stalwarts, and Hillary being married to Bill and being a failed presidential candidate herself.
Yeah.
So
and someone was almost prosecuted, but Comey let her off the hook for the classified documents where she had all those on her server, among other things. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've had a good discussion, but I need to keep this beyond, so we don't get this into an hour and a half range and everything like we do on Friday.
Yeah, no problem.
But anyway, Dave, thanks a lot for joining me today. Anything else you want to say or comment on in the news?
No, but you make a good point, because I think sometimes when we do the Dwight's final thought, it's actually longer than the show.
It does seem like that sometimes, doesn't it?
You just start off with the final thought that it hasn't done.
Yeah. I don't know. We that's a very loose format show.
But I like it. But yeah, no other thoughts though. But yeah.
I try to keep this one a little tighter.
Yeah, no, it's good. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, and thanks for those that have tuned in throughout the show. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm not sure when the show's returning. Probably maybe around the 16th or so. We'll see. But,
if anyone checks David Shephard just as it's spelled at Substack, and you can get my column.
Yeah, please read his Substack. David's written some good articles, and support him in any way you can. And then buy your books. Tell That'll be the last thing. Tell us briefly about your books before we sign off.
2 books are political fiction, although they sort of really happened. Norton's Choice, which is about a governor who has to make a choice between resigning or staying in office and fighting. And elections have consequences, a cautionary tale. Both of them take place in Virginia, but you don't have to be a Virginian to appreciate the books. But it all sort of really happened. So it's just a way of making my political points through fiction, which might be a more fun way than reading just general columns, which are out there, and you see plenty of those. So that's on Amazon. So you can look up my name or look up those titles. You can find me on Amazon, and you can read the first chapter for free. Amazon allows you to do that.
No, that's great. Well, that's terrific. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join me today and fill in on this snowy day as we catch up with the news. And once again, as I said to everybody, thanks for joining us today. Please stay safe, as always, and healthy. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We will see you again probably sometime next week. Bye-bye.